I've always loved the solitude of nature, the way the woods feel like they exist outside time. Last fall, my cousin Liam and I planned a 2-day camping trip deep in the Adirondack Mountains. We wanted to get far away from everything. No cell signal, no roads, just endless forest and silence. We arrived late afternoon and found a clearing surrounded by towering pines with thick trunks twisted by age. The scent of damp earth and pine needles filled the air, mixed with the faint smoke from the campfire we built. The sky was a clear navy blue, sprinkled with stars just beginning to peek out. After setting up our tent, Liam and I settled in with some cards by the fire, the flames crackling and popping in the cool night air. The only sounds were the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. Around 10 p.m., I thought I heard something unusual, a soft humming floating in from the tree line. It wasn't like the birds or insects we expected. It was a slow, deliberate melody, almost like a lullaby sung by a woman, but distant and muffled. I stopped shuffling the cards and looked toward the woods, shining my flashlight just beyond the firelight. Nothing but shadows shifting with the wind. Liam went still too and whispered, "Do you hear that? That humming sounds exactly like the song our grandfather used to hum when we were kids." I froze. Our grandfather had passed away years ago. Suddenly, something small hit the fire. A stick cracked by the heat as it landed among the flames. It wasn't accidental. Someone was out there. Liam's face grew pale and I felt my heart beat faster. I tried to laugh it off, but neither of us moved from that spot for a long time. I remember the night stretching out, the air turning colder, and the humming growing louder, closer. Around 3 a.m., I woke suddenly, my body tense. Just past the trees, a figure swayed in the darkness. Not walking, not running, just watching, almost like it was waiting. In the morning, we found tiny, bare footprints circling our tent. They were too small for a grown man, but too odd for a child. The toes splayed unevenly, like claws. Near the fire pit was a small bundle of feathers tied with twine. Liam said we should leave, but I was stubborn, wanting one more night. The second night was worse. Around 2 a.m., I heard the soft sound of a zipper sliding down. Our tent flap. I reached for my flashlight, but Liam was still fast asleep beside me. A voice whispered my name, low and gravelly. "Matt?" The zipper stopped, then zipped back up slowly. Footsteps retreated into the darkness. Sleep fled from me that night. At dawn, Liam was already packed and ready to go. Liam, we left without a word. Weeks later, the humming returned, in my dreams. Inside my tent, beneath the thin canvas. It never stopped. About a year ago, I started working as a night cleaner at an old funeral home in New Orleans. It was a quiet, almost eerie job. Midnight until 6 in the morning, just me and the dozens of bodies resting in the cold, sterile halls. The building was an architectural relic, with creaky wooden floors, stained glass windows casting colored shadows, and thick velvet curtains that muffled every sound. Fresh lilies were placed in every viewing room, their scent both calming and oddly unsettling in the stillness. On my first day, my supervisor handed me a heavy keyring and said with a grim smile, "Just don't open the embalming room after midnight. It's best left alone." The first couple of nights went by without incident. I polished the marble floors, dusted the caskets, and cleaned the viewing rooms in silence. But on my third night, something changed. While wiping down one of the steel trolleys in viewing room 4, I noticed it was slightly off, as if it had been moved. I shrugged it off but felt a chill crawl up my spine. Later, I glanced toward one of the bodies resting there. The man's head, which I was certain had been turned slightly to the left the night before, was now facing right. My heart pounded. I rationalized it must have been my imagination. Curious and uneasy, I checked the security camera footage for that room at 2:11 a.m., but when I reached that timestamp, the video cut out completely for 3 minutes. No sound, no image, just static. Then it resumed, showing the body sitting upright. Its eyes were closed, but for a split second it seemed like the figure was staring straight into the camera. I rewound and watched it again and again. That glitch, that silence in the feed felt like a crack in reality. On the fourth night, I tried to avoid that room altogether. But at 3 a.m. I heard it, the unmistakable sound of breathing. Slow, shallow, coming from behind the door. Whispering followed. My hands trembled as I slowly turned the doorknob. The room was cold, colder than the rest of the building, and the body, I swear, it had its mouth wide open. The previous day, it had been sewn shut. I dropped the cleaning supplies and backed away. The fifth night, I left my phone recording in the embalming prep room. At 2:06 a.m., I played back the footage. I saw myself, walking, talking, whispering, smiling, to the dead. A voice hissed faintly through the speakers, "You belong here." I didn't return after that night, but sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see the corpse's face grinning at me, waiting. Weeks later, the humming returned, in my dreams. Inside my tent, beneath the thin canvas. It never stopped. A few summers ago, I decided to take a solo sailing trip through the San Juan Islands off the coast of Washington State. I was between jobs, emotionally drained from a recent breakup, and just needed to disconnect. From the internet, from people, from everything. It was supposed to be peaceful, quiet, a kind of self-healing retreat. For 3 days, it was. I drop anchor near uninhabited islands, grill simple meals, and fall asleep to the sound of the waves. I didn't even bring a radio, just a sat phone sealed in a waterproof box, for emergencies only. On the fourth night, everything changed. I had anchored in a small cove between two rocky outcrops. The water was unusually calm, and the fog was thick, so thick in fact, that when I looked out from the deck, I couldn't even see 10 feet beyond the bow. Around 3 a.m., I woke up in my tiny cabin to a strange sound. Not the lapping of water or the creaking of wood. No, this was heavier, more deliberate. It sounded like footsteps on the deck. My heart froze. I lay there for a second, convincing myself it was just part of a dream. Maybe something had fallen. Maybe a bird. But then I heard it again. Slow. One foot, then the other. Wood softly groaning beneath pressure. I eased out of bed, grabbed my flashlight, and crept up the stairs. I didn't turn the light on yet. I didn't want to give away my position. I peered through the small porthole. Just fog, nothing but white mist swirling in every direction. But the sound continued, now accompanied by something dragging, like wet rope being pulled across the deck. I opened the hatch silently and stepped onto the deck. Nothing. I walked from bow to stern, shining the light across every corner. All I found was a set of wet footprints, bare feet, human, leading from the stern to the edge of the boat, and vanishing. No splash, no other boat, no one in the water. I backed down into the cabin and locked the hatch. I sat up the rest of the night, flashlight in hand, ears straining. At dawn, I went back up. The footprints were still there, dried now, but unmistakable. Later that day, I sailed into Roche Harbor to restock and report what had happened. One of the old harbor hands, a grizzled guy with leathery skin, asked what cove I'd anchored in. I pointed to it on the map. He went silent for a beat. Then he said, "You know a boat went down there 2 winters ago, right?" Guy vanished in the fog. They found the vessel empty, anchor still dropped. I didn't respond. He leaned in and said, "That boat had footsteps on the deck too." A few months ago, I was babysitting a quiet 5-year-old named Mason. His family had just moved into a tall Victorian house in Salem, Massachusetts. The place creaked constantly. Every floorboard groaned like it was telling a secret, and the air vents were everywhere, thin, black, and oddly large for such an old home. Mason was sweet but strange. He had this habit of staring up at the vents, not watching TV, not coloring, just staring. On my first night after his parents left, Mason handed me a crayon drawing. It showed a little boy in bed with a tall, dark figure peering down through the ceiling vent. "That's the tall man," Mason whispered. "He watches me when I sleep." I smiled, uneasy. "You have a big imagination." But later that night, after I tucked him in, I was alone in the living room. Wind scraped at the windows, the house groaned, and then I heard tapping. Tap, tap, tap. It came from above me, from the vent in the ceiling. I froze. Then a whisper so faint I almost missed it. "Don't look up." I didn't. The next weekend, Mason gave me another drawing, just a dark square with two huge, uneven eyes inside it. "He's been closer," he said. That night, the tapping came again, slower this time, more deliberate. I stood on the couch and shined my flashlight into the vent. At first, nothing. Then I saw it, eyes, wide, unblinking, reflecting the light back at me. I screamed and called Mason's parents. They rushed home and phoned the police. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes and searched the house top to bottom. One noticed something strange about a hallway mirror. It wasn't fixed to the wall. Behind it, they found a narrow crawl space. Inside was a makeshift nest, filthy blankets, snack wrappers, an old Polaroid camera, and a notebook. Dozens of pages filled with drawings of Mason, of me, of other babysitters, each one sleeping. They found him minutes later, a barefoot man, pale and silent, hiding behind a vent panel upstairs. He'd been living inside the walls for months, watching, listening, moving through the vents undetected. Mason's family moved out 2 days later. I've never babysat again. But sometimes when the house creaks at night, or when I hear a faint tapping I can't explain, I wonder if he ever really left. A few weeks ago, I went hiking alone in the Pacific Northwest, just a weekend trip to clear my head. I chose a lesser-known trail near Mount Rainier. It was supposed to be a 9-mile loop, quiet, beautiful, and isolated. Just what I wanted. I started mid-morning. The first few miles were perfect. Mist hanging low, birdsong echoing through the trees, my boots crunching over damp leaves. About 4 miles in, I noticed something odd, a sock. Just one, child-sized, sitting right in the center of the path. I paused, took a picture, figured someone dropped it and kept going. Then I saw another, a child's shoe this time, perched neatly on a mossy stump. Too deliberate to be random, but I didn't hear anyone else on the trail. That's when I noticed I hadn't seen another hiker all day. Not even footprints in the mud, except my own. A mile later, I started seeing signs that the forest was off. Trees with deep gashes in the bark, rocks stacked into crude shapes, a teddy bear nailed to a trunk, weather-worn, missing an eye. I pulled out my phone. No signal, of course. At mile 7, I passed a small wooden sign pointing left. Scenic overlook, 0.5 miles. I took the turn. The path narrowed and dipped sharply. I walked for maybe 20 minutes, then 30, then 40. No overlook, no end. I turned around to head back to the main loop, but the trail behind me wasn't there. The forest had swallowed it. No junction, just trees. I kept walking, trying to retrace my steps. That's when I heard it rustling behind me. At first it could have been wind, then it became footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I turned. Nothing. I started moving faster. The trees looked unfamiliar. There were carvings now, symbols etched deep into trunks. Spirals, eyes, crude stick figures. Then I heard a child's voice whisper, "This way." I froze. The voice came from the brush to my right. I called out, thinking maybe a kid had gotten lost, but there was no answer, just the sound of breathing. I ran. Branches clawed at my arms. My legs burned. I swear the trees moved, shifting when I blinked, narrowing the path. Finally, I broke into a Queuz clearing. In the middle was a tent, old, mildewed, torn open like something clawed its way out. I peeked inside. It was filled with Polaroids, pictures of hikers, dozens, some smiling, some crying. One of a man that looked just like me, standing right where I stood. I turned and ran again, pushing through the trees until, suddenly, I was back at the parking lot, just like that. My car was there, keys still in my pocket, but the woods behind me looked, still, empty. I never found the loop trail again on any map. And sometimes when the wind howls at night, it sounds just like that voice, calling me back. I never considered myself brave, especially when it came to abandoned places. But my friend Gabe was obsessed with urban exploration, the thrill of sneaking into forgotten buildings and uncovering lost history. After months of insistence, I finally agreed to join him. We went to the old Briarcliff Asylum, just outside Baltimore. It was a decaying hospital with a dark past, patients lost in endless hallways, cruel treatments, and a fire that destroyed half the East Wing decades ago. People said it was cursed. We arrived just before sunset. The asylum loomed ahead, its broken windows like empty eyes. We found a hidden service entrance behind a collapsed brick wall. Gabe slipped inside and motioned me to follow. Inside, the air was thick and cold, unnatural cold. It smelled like decay and something metallic, like old blood. The walls were cracked and covered in dust. Our footsteps felt muffled, swallowed by the building itself. Gabe pulled out his phone to record. "Ward C," said a faded sign above a rusted door. "The solitary confinement wing," he whispered. I felt dread instead of excitement. We walked down the hallway, stepping over broken glass. Gabe stopped suddenly. On the floor were tiny barefoot footprints, smudged in dried mud, leading to a heavy metal door. The door was slightly open. Gabe pushed it, revealing a dim room with cold concrete walls covered in carvings. Faces. Hundreds of faces etched deep into the stone, with twisted mouths and screaming eyes, frozen in silent agony. I shone my flashlight over them, heart pounding. The faces seemed alive, watching us. The air grew colder, my breath fogged. Then my light flickered and went out. In the darkness, I heard slow, shallow breathing from the corner. I fumbled for my flashlight. When it came back on, the room was empty, but I still felt watched. I tried to leave, but the hallway was different. Doors that had been open were now closed. Corridors twisted back on themselves, trapping me. Then I saw a figure, barefoot, in torn hospital clothes, standing perfectly still, head tilted unnaturally, watching me. I ran. Every turn led back to the same room with the faces. I called Gabe's name, but only silence answered. My lungs burned as I sprinted through the maze. Finally, I burst into the cold night. The door slammed behind me. When I looked back, there was no one. Weeks passed, Gabe never returned. Police found no trace. Then, a month later, I got a package. Inside was a USB drive with a shaky video. Gabe's frightened face whispered, "It sees me. It won't let me leave. It's coming." Behind him, one carved face moved, twisting into a cruel smile. The video cut to black. They never found Gabe, but sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear him whisper my name. Two years ago, I lived in Chicago. I walked to work every morning past the same bakery, the same corner cafe, same crowd of commuters. It was familiar, predictable. I liked that. Then I noticed him, the man with the green baseball cap. At first, he just stood at the crosswalk near the cafe, hands in his jacket pockets, never moving. I saw him 3 days in a row. Same clothes, same posture, same blank stare across the street. I figured he was waiting for someone, or maybe just a local. But the fourth day, I saw him again. Not by the cafe. This time, he was standing across from my apartment building. I live on the 3rd floor, above a hardware store. He wasn't doing anything, just standing. Still, that night, I closed every curtain in my apartment. The 5th day, I changed my route to work, added 10 minutes by cutting through the park. I didn't expect to see him there, but he was, sitting on a bench by the pond. He didn't look at me, but he didn't have to. I started walking faster. He didn't follow. But somehow it felt like he didn't need to. Then came the first message. No name, no number, just text. "You take long showers." My heart dropped. I checked every window, every lock. I stayed up until sunrise. The next morning, "You talk in your sleep." No one else had a key. I lived alone. I asked my landlord to check the building's hallway camera. Nothing. I even filed a police report, but there wasn't enough for them to do anything. No threats, no crimes, just a gut-wrenching sense of being watched. On night 8, I fell asleep by accident. I woke up at 3:02 a.m. to a soft tapping, not from the hallway, from the window. I live on the 3rd floor. I sat up, heart pounding. The blinds were half open. I peeked through, no one there. But taped to the outside glass was a Polaroid. The photo was of me. In my bathroom mirror, hair wet, brushing my teeth. The picture had been taken from behind. I moved out the next day. No forwarding address. I changed numbers, switched cities. For 6 months, nothing happened. I started to relax. Until last week. I was walking home from the store here in Denver. I passed a park bench. A man sat there. He didn't look up, but resting in his lap was a green baseball cap. My legs turned to jelly. I dropped my bag and ran. Haven't seen him since. But the other night my phone buzzed. A new number, no name. Just one line of text. Miss me? It was a rainy Thursday night in Chicago. Sleeting rain, neon reflections on wet pavement, and that bone-deep chill that makes the city feel haunted. I was leaving a friend's apartment in Lincoln Park after a late dinner. I called an Uber like always, not even thinking twice. The app said the car was 5 minutes away, a black Toyota Camry. The driver's name was Alex. I waited under the awning of the building, watching cars blur past. At 11:17 p.m., a black Camry pulled up. I checked the license plate. It matched. The windows were tinted, and the driver didn't roll them down, just popped the lock. I got in the back. The inside smelled faintly of cigarettes and something metallic. I glanced at the driver, hood up, face half lit by the dashboard. He didn't greet me, just nodded and pulled off into the night. At first I thought maybe he was just one of those quiet types. No music, no radio, no small talk, fine. But then the route on my phone started shifting. We weren't heading toward my apartment, we were heading west, into a more industrial part of the city. "Hey," I said, leaning forward, "I think you missed the turn." The driver didn't respond. I tapped the screen on the seat back. No rideshare info was showing, just a dark screen. "Alex?" I asked. Still nothing. Then I noticed the name tag hanging from the rearview mirror. It didn't say Alex, it said Derek. My stomach dropped. I checked my phone again. The app was still tracking the original ride, only now it said the driver had canceled. 3 minutes after I got into the car, I'd gotten into the wrong vehicle. Panic started rising. My eyes darted to the door. No lock button. I reached slowly for the handle. That's when he spoke. "You're not supposed to move yet." His voice was calm, too calm, like he was reciting instructions. I froze. We turned down a side street. No streetlights, just warehouses and fences. He slowed down by an alley. "I wasn't looking for you," he said, "but you got in." Then he reached under his seat. I didn't wait. I kicked the back of his seat as hard as I could, threw myself against the door, thank God it wasn't child-locked, and tumbled out onto the wet pavement. I ran. I didn't look back, not even when I heard the tires screech. I ducked between two buildings and crouched behind a dumpster, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. By the time officers arrived, the Camry was gone. They never found him. No plates matching that number were registered in the system. The original ride I'd booked, the real Alex, he reported a no-show, claimed no one ever approached his car. To this day, I don't know who I got into that car with, or what would have happened if I hadn't realized in time. But now, every time I call a ride, I ask the driver to say my name first, and I never get in until they do, just in case.